Imagine going to the bank one day only to find out that your account is overdrawn. You've got bills due, soccer supplies to buy for the kiddos, groceries to stock in the fridge, but only to have all of your financial resources suddenly vanquished. How would you feel if your financial resources were suddenly depleted? Nothing in the checking account, nothing in savings. Imagine the ATM laughing at you as you swipe and swipe and swipe again. Today I'm going to discuss something just as important as the financial capital that you have in your bank account. I'm going to discuss some valuable principles you can take to the mental health bank. I'm going to talk about recovery capital and its relationship to resilience. But first, I need a high five from you, my listeners, this digital high five. Would you share this podcast with 5 friends? Give me a like or a heart or 5 stars wherever you're listening so that I can keep this message and keep this work, keep this content coming. But I need your help in order to do that. Share it with 5 friends, like it, subscribe to it so that when I send out a new podcast episode, you get the updates. And take a seat. Like if you're driving right now, you do not want to miss the information on the other side of this intro. So share, support me, give me a high five. Send me an email at themindfulpharmd@gmail.com if you want to talk about and have a discussion about something. If you know some cool connections where I can invite people on and talk to them about different mental health topics, I want to hear from you. Email me at themindfulpharmd@gmail.com and stay tuned for what's ahead. You're listening to the Mindful PharmD podcast. Welcome and 1,000 thanks for tuning in. This podcast is about all of us. I'm your host and the mind behind the microphone, Matt Manhero. My focus on this podcast is to explore the mind through genuine conversations, thought-provoking ideas, and the reality that the story of mental health is incomplete. What's up, Mindful Nation? I want to thank you again for tuning in to the Mindful PharmD podcast. I'm your host, Matt Manhero, and I've got a show for you today. I want to talk about how to improve and make deposits into your resilience fund. You know, we a lot of times are so concerned with making sure that we have, certain capital that we can use, financial capital that we can use to purchase things, to make sure we have an adequate retirement fund, all of these things that we worry about when it comes to green and to paper, right, as we call it. But today I want to talk to you about how to improve your resilience fund. I'm going to unpack a few concepts that I think are helpful as you experience stressful situations, as you experience rough days like the one I'm going to tell you about that I had just a few days ago. I'm going to talk to you about what exactly is this idea, what exactly is recovery capital. And, when you look at some of the practices that have been in place for centuries now when it comes to natural medicine and natural remedies, one very important element of that is breathing and mindfulness. And as I get started here, I want to ask you another favor. Will you send me an email at themindfulpharmd@gmail.com and let me know what mindfulness means to you. What does it mean to you to be mindful, and kind of walk me through some of the things that you do to help you remain calm or to help you get over a slump. You know, sometimes it's hump day in our minds. It's Wednesday, right? It's that day of the week. We exhaust so much mental energy, maybe in our jobs, maybe in parenting, maybe in getting to know our spouses, whatever the situation is. We all have days where some days are just not as good as other days. And so today I want to tell you about a day I had. But first I want to talk to you about this idea called box breathing. First of all, we know that box breathing has been around for centuries. And this practice really does find its roots in the ancient East. And even to this day, Navy SEALs use it. For example, Navy SEALs will use box breathing in high stress situations. We know that Navy SEALs are highly trained. They're an elite group of military personnel, you know, and I didn't know this until recently, but typically they only have about 10 active teams of the Navy SEALs, where there are about 200 or so men and women on these teams. And they accomplish some of the toughest missions and experience some of the toughest missions that the rest of us would cry if we had to do some of their missions. I mean, going into enemy territory, having to swim and hold your breath for, half an hour on end, just these crazy practices that we hear about in the movies, but that these people actually do in real life. And sometimes when they're in those stressful moments, they use this method called box breathing. And I'm going to, what that means here, I'll unpack in just a minute. They use this method, though, to help improve their mental health when they're in those stressful situations, rather than flying off on the deep end or, just losing control. They focus instead. They focus their breath. They focus their breathing on overcoming that stressful situation. And the truth is, our bodies are designed so intelligently that a lot of the things we need in order to overcome, a lot of things that we need in order to get through a tough situation, we have present within our bodies. And I'm going to talk about that when we talk about recovery capital. But this box breathing method is a way for you to slow your breathing. It helps you relax. It increases oxygen to your brain. It releases tension, and it stimulates the vagus nerve. Now, some of us might know that the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the human body, and it goes from the bottom of the brainstem or from the top of the brainstem, depending upon your perspective, all the way to the other end. And you know what other end I'm talking about. Like it's the longest nerve in the human body. And when you stimulate the vagus nerve, you have this ability to reduce your heart rate. So this box breathing method that these Navy SEALs use in these high stress situations gives them that ability to, again, breathe in oxygen, to bring in that oxygen into their brain, to bring in that oxygen into their environment, so that they then can have control over their response and how they move through difficult situations, and how they move through tough terrain, how they experience a mission where lives might depend on it. Our security as a nation might depend on it. They go through and practice this box breathing for those purposes, to maintain control. So what exactly is box breathing? First of all, I want you to imagine a square, right? That's where it gets its name from, box. It's a box. Imagine that there's a square, and in each square, you have these. You're either going to inhale, you're either going to hold, you're going to exhale, and then you're going to hold again. So here's what you need to do. If you want to experience box breathing, you need to set a timer for 5 minutes, and then sit down with a straight spine on the floor, or you can do this in a chair with your feet flat on the floor. Then you want to close your eyes and inhale for a count of 4. 2, 3, 4. And then hold that breath for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. And then exhale for a count of 4. 2, 3, 4. And then hold that end of that breath one more time. or a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you just repeat this until your 5-minute alarm sounds. And you know what? The good thing about box breathing is you don't have to wait until you're in a stressful situation before you do it. This is a good way that throughout the week, throughout the day, to just develop healthy breathing habits. And again, to bring in that oxygen into your body and to fight off that tension and push away those stressful hormones that oftentimes flow through our mind when we're in those stressful situations, or even if we're thinking about a stressful situation. We're thinking about what we're going to have to do when we go to work. We're thinking about what we're going to have to do the next day to get the kids ready. We're thinking about this big vacation that's coming up. All these things that are sources of stress. This box breathing can be a way for you to develop a source of resilience, which I want to talk about today. So the other day, I'm this day I had, man, I can't tell you enough how challenging it was. And I found myself breathing multiple times in order to bring myself to a state of calm. I can't exactly tell you why I felt the way I did. I can't exactly tell you, where the thoughts that were in my head were coming from. All I know is that it was a tough day. I had to, on multiple occasions, sort of take a step back and put myself in a state of mind to where it's like, okay, this anxiety that you're feeling, this moment of stress that you're feeling, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. And so, I'm going to talk about a few of the things. I'm going to give you some homework at the end of this episode too. But one of the things that I found to be helpful, again, was just to put myself in a state of mind to where I can slow down, understand and realize that the situation I'm in right now is just temporary. In one of Dan Siegel's books, you'll hear me refer to him often, but he talks a lot about how the brain has neuroplasticity. And this isn't a novel idea. We all know that the brain is, or we should know that the brain has this ability to sort of flex and bend and on a neural level. I'm not talking about physically bending, but I'm saying, it has the ability to sort of change and adapt based on the experiences that we're in. And so this sort of changing that the brain experiences is why we say that it's neuroplastic. And a lot of times what we give our attention to will determine whether or not our brain is in a state of rigidity or if our brain is in a state of relaxation. And so when we find ourselves, again, going back to that box method, when we find ourselves in that state of rigidity, it's so important for us to maintain and to actively put ourselves in a state of relaxation. And so on this day, guys, I found myself again numerous times breathing through these moments. And with me being the mindful PharmD, right, as I call myself, I'm sort of practicing what I preach by, in those moments when I'm stressed out, when I'm anxious, when I'm worried, when I'm doubting myself and my goals in life and all of these different things that I have on the horizon. When I'm in those moments, if I can just find a place and find a way to relax and calm down, these are the things that I want to be mindful of. And, I find myself too more aware now because I'm practicing and being mindful of where I am, who I am, and how I'm feeling. I'm finding myself more often now being aware of those moments when my brain is in a state and my mind is in a state of rigidity. Dan Siegel talks about how there's a difference between thoughts and feelings. A person can feel as if they're alone. A person can feel as if they are anxious, but the thoughts that come with those feelings are typically negative. The thoughts that come with those feelings are typically things like, I'm not good enough, or this situation that I'm in right now is too much for me to handle, right? Those are the thoughts that leads to the feelings of being alone or being anxious or being depressed. And so practicing these breathing methods and practicing these ways that you can overcome and build up a certain level of resilience is really going to benefit you at the end of the day. And so I found myself in this day just worried about random things. It took me, I had a challenging time trying to focus. But every time, I can tell you, every time that these thoughts would reoccur, these moments of reoccurring negativity, every time they would occur, I would take a deep breath. I would release that tension, and I'd feel a little bit better, even if for a moment. So this sort of brought me to the topic for today, which is something that has, it was really first conceptualized in the early 90s by Robert Granfield and William Cloud. And what this principle is, it's called the recovery capital principle. And really where it finds its roots is in the non-pharmacological treatment of addiction. They use this to help people overcome gambling addiction. They use this recovery capital principle to help people overcome alcoholism. And they did it without pharmacological treatment. And me as a pharmacist, I know that there are options out there to help people with their addictions. And for some people, that route is necessary. But for these people that they studied when they were developing this concept of recovery capital, really what they did was they followed 46 individuals who overcame their substance addiction by natural means. And what Granfield and Cloud did was they conceptualized 3 main recovery capital domains. And they labeled these domains as human capital, physical capital, and social capital. These were like the first 3, the triad, if you will, of factors and elements in your life that give you the ability to recover. Again, within the realm of addiction, but I'm going to show you how this principle really does sound a lot like resilience. And so with this recovery capital, what it does is it enables individuals to function better and to implement a range of coping strategies to achieve sustainable and long-term recovery. So in this first domain, first off, this human capital, later on we see that Granfield and Cloud and others, they build upon this concept of the first triad, the human, the physical, and the social. And to now they have 5 main capital resources, if you will, or capital factors that help people overcome and to recover. They are human capital, social capital, physical capital, cultural capital, and community capital. The main 3 that I want to focus on today, though, and how they relate to resilience, are really the first 3, which is the human, the social, and the physical. So human capital is really conceptualized as your well-being, your self-efficacy, your ability to control your emotions, to control your behaviors, these things that are innate within you that give you the power to overcome and to recover. Again, when we talk about within the realm of addiction, specifically how a person might overcome needing to drink 6 bottles of beer a day, or how a drug addict might overcome needing to have that high. So these things, and I don't want to trivialize addiction at all, but what they found was that within us, there is this ability, this human capital, this innate individualistic ability to overcome things and to recover from stressful situations. And so you have to think and ask yourself, how likely is it, or how well do you function in terms of your self-control? When you see a donut and you've got a sweet tooth, are you able to say, "Nah, I'm good. I'm gonna pass on that. I'm gonna pass on that treat"? Or do you just give in? You just go straight forward and you take when you're supposed to be dieting, or it's going to upset your diabetes or upset your sugar levels. What do you do in those moments? How likely is it that you will abstain from a certain behavior or abstain from a certain allowing a certain thought to take power and take control over your situation and over your experience. So that's the first domain, the human capital. And then the second domain is the social capital. So the social capital is really defined as the sum of a person's tangible or virtual resources, such as family and relationships and broader social networks. So we move on from the individual, and now we come to the social, your friends, your family. How healthy are those relationships? Those things, those connections give you the ability, or can give you the ability and aid in your ability to recover and to overcome and to develop a sense of resilience, a sense of strength. The social capital. It refers to the benefits of taking part in social groups. Do you go to church? Do you have friends outside of work? Do you have friends outside of your immediate home? And if you do, what is the quality of those relationships? Not the quantity, but what is the quality of those relationships? How well can you trust that your life? How well can you trust that when you put your situation and your life in the hands of somebody else, that they're going to handle it with care? What does your social capital look like? And then lastly, the physical capital, which is defined as a domain that relates mainly to, financial assets such as income and property, wealth and housing. And having these resources can open doors in order for an individual to recover, in order for an individual to develop a sense of resilience. Now, again, I know that as I'm speaking, you're saying to yourself, well, how does this relate? When we talk in the realm of addiction, you can see how having physical capital, physical means to go and pay for, an alcoholic or an addictions expert to help you overcome those situations. So in order to go and to pay for rehab, or in order to live in a community that gives you the ability to recover. So having that physical capital can be an aid and can be a source of recovery. Well, so too, when you talk about resilience, you look at the socioeconomic factors, the physical capital of an individual who has, maybe they have the ability to go and pay for counseling, or maybe they have the ability to go and take a vacation to reset and to recover. This physical capital then has a way of helping you, or could potentially have a way of helping you through a tough decision. If you can't afford to go on a vacation, if you can't afford to take a break because your physical capital, your finances are not in a place that allows you to do that, then you just have one less source of recovery or one less source of resilience. So we talked about human capital, we talked about social capital, and we talked about the physical capital as terms of Granfield and Cloud's recovery capital. And again, these people that they followed, they overcame their addiction without the help of any drugs, without the help of any pharmacological substances, but using their human capital, using their social capital, using whatever physical capital they had access to, they were able to overcome these things. And a lot of times when you talk about the idea of addiction, it's not always about will. It's really about knowing and having the skill to overcome, the skill to recover. A lot of times the will is there, but they don't have the means, the physical means, the social means, the human means, the innate human means in order to overcome these tough things. And so likewise too, when we talk about resilience and how it relates to this principle of recovery capital, really recovery capital and resilience are the two sides of the same coin. And so as I studied this and took into mind and researched Granfield and Cloud's work and others' work about recovery capital, it sounds a lot like the idea of resilience. And the definition of resilience is the ability to recover quickly from difficulties, to spring back into shape. How many of us would would love to be able to spring back into shape our mental health, to spring back into shape our ability to get through stressful situations. You see, resilience helps you realize that what you might feel in the moment can change in a moment. That uncomfortable feeling you feel when you're stressed, when you're frustrated, when you're angry, when you're embarrassed, all of these things are just temporary storms. You know, I grew up in Florida, and I joke about it all the time, but, you know, in Florida, it can be rainy one minute and sunny the very next. Or if you really want to get weird, it can be rainy and sunny at the same time. So you have to understand that when you go through these moments of stress, when you go through these moments of difficulty, you have to trust and know that they are temporary, and that there's a difference between a feeling and a thought. A feeling and a thought. Feelings are more or less temporary. Your thoughts, though, they take some work. And so that's where the whole idea of mindfulness comes in, and having these sources of resilience to come in and really help you through those moments. So bridging these two concepts together, I've coined a phrase. You're talking about bridging recovery capital and resilience. Really, you know, it's really simple. It's just a resilience fund. Do you have a healthy resilience fund? You can put into this fund, or you can take away from this fund. And the way you put into the fund, I'm going to give you a few ways that I put into my fund, and this is going to be a part of your homework, but I want you to identify some resilience resources that you have available to you in your life. You see, because resilience requires practice, just like saving physical capital, physical money. Sometimes you contribute to the fund, and then at other times, you know, say during an emergency, you withdraw from the fund. But the goal is to make more deposits than withdrawals. That's how you get and develop a healthy savings account. That's how you develop a healthy resilience fund, is by making more deposits than withdrawals. Those things that cause you to withdraw from your resilience fund are stress, uncertainty, things that frustrate you, things that make you angry, things that make you upset. Those things cause you to withdraw. And so likewise, you have to find sources that help you make deposits. And so how you make deposits will depend on the resources that you have available. And let's be honest, like I said earlier, some people have more resources than others. When you talk about the human capital, those things that are innate to each and every one of us, it all depends on how we grew up. How did you see your mom and your dad and your parents handle stressful situations? Did they become angry, or did they practice having resolve? Those things are the way that they behaved is also going to be the way potentially that you behave, because behavior is learned. So that human capital. And then when you talk about the social capital, you're growing up, you're grown and on your own in this moment. Do you have adequate social capital that help you make deposits into your resilience fund? Are there friends that you can trust that are available? Family, again, whether it be, I find community in going to church. I find community in hanging out with people from my church and the strength that comes from that. So do you have access to those types of resources? And then when you talk about the physical, again, if you can't afford to go on a vacation, if you can't afford to take a step back to cash in some of those days at work, how likely is it that you're going to be resilient when another stressful situation presents itself? How likely are you going to be able to recover? How likely are you going to be able to overcome and think through and realize this is just a temporary situation that I'm in? This too shall pass. Let's be honest. Some of us have more resources than others, whether it's economical, familial, relational. And some of us also have more sources that cause us to withdraw from our resilience fund. Whether you're a VP of an organization or a leader of an organization, these stress factors, this balance between leisure and stress and fun and work. Is there really a balance? Some would say no. You know, in this day and age, there's so much pulling at our attention that the scales of work-life balance have been tipped in the favor of work for so long. When you talk about low-paying jobs and low wages and people graduating from college with degrees that they can't even use, and so they end up having to work more than they can actually enjoy life, because it means the difference between whether or not they're going to lose their house, whether or not they're going to be able to succeed later in life. So stress is what I'm saying. These are stressful situations. These are things that cause you to withdraw from your resilience fund. So here are a few ways that, I develop my resilience fund. Number one, for me, prayer is essential. Prayer is essential. Some of you may not realize it, or some of you may not have a prayer life, or maybe, just by practicing mindfulness, you feel as if you're tapping into a certain, spiritual domain. But for me, prayer is essential. Prayer gives me that energy. Prayer gives me that strength that I need. It's my primary source of resilience. And I find that strength when I spend time either, on my knees or riding on taking right now I drive 45 minutes to work. So sometimes I use all that time praying. And in those moments, by the time I arrive at the store, by the time I arrive at my workplace, I'm ready. I've got the energy I need to get me through the day because I've spent time in prayer. Another source of resilience for me is having a sense of intentional awareness of what's actually bothering me. Because here's the truth. That day, recently when I had that tough time, that tough day, again, just in my brain, in my mind, it was just tough. And I'm in a situation, I'm in an environment that requires, I'm pulled in 5, 6, 7, 8 different directions. Having an intentional awareness of what's actually bothering me, I realized in that moment, it wasn't work. It wasn't my coworkers. It wasn't my customers coming in. There were other things that had plagued me, really, that I brought into the day from the previous day that were now bothering me. And so being intentionally aware of what's actually bothering you can be a way for you to say, this person is not the problem. This person yelling at me across the counter is not the problem. This person pulling on my attention in this moment, my coworker pulling on my attention in the moment, is not the problem. My wife not understanding, or my spouse not understanding what I'm trying to communicate, is not the problem. What exactly is bothering you, and being intentionally aware of what that is that keeps you stuck, or that has you feeling like you're stuck. It's about being mindful, not being mindless. Being mindful, not being mindless. So that's another source for me that I put into my resilience fund. And that, again, that's having that intentional awareness of what's actually bothering me. So I'm able to realize in the moment and overcome in the moment and say, this isn't the problem. I can name the issue. And then it helps me to realize that what I thought was the issue, or what I feel is the issue in front of me, is not really the issue. So having an intentional awareness of what's actually bothering me can be a source of resilience for me. The third thing that I find help in is having relationships with my coworkers, with my family, and really with my customers. A few weeks ago, I had the wonderful privilege of meeting a woman who, she came into the store and she asked me a question about an over-the-counter product. And, I asked her some questions, as I always do, because when it comes to medications, I'm a little bit conservative because I believe, again, that a lot of what we need to overcome is innate to us. It's natural. It's in our bodies. Sure, sometimes we need a little bit of a supplement, whether it be a vitamin or a prescription drug. We need that supplement every now and then. But for all intents and purposes, everything we need to overcome is beautifully woven within this body of ours, within this mind of ours. And so she came in the store. She was stressed out. She was looking for some type of vitamin to help her focus. And just by asking her some questions and really taking the time to get to know her in that moment and developing a professional relationship with her, what I found out was that she was stressed out about her husband having cancer. And I looked at her and I said, what you need is not another pill. You need rest. And she looked at me and she said, you're right. I'm stressed out about what's happening in my home. My husband is uncharacteristically, he's yelling at me more because he's stressed. And so, she's in the store and she's looking for something, another Band-Aid to put on top of the situation that she's experiencing. And I said, you just need some rest. So I have to believe that she walked out of that store that day feeling a little bit stronger. And I asked her at that moment, I said, who can you talk to? Do you have friends? Do you have relationships with close friends or with family whom you can confide in and talk to them about what you're feeling and be okay to be honest with them and say, I'm stressed out. Things are out of control. I'm afraid that my husband is going to die. I'm afraid that my husband I'm going to lose him. So developing those relationships for me is another source of resilience. And then related to it, my last source of resilience is really and truly making others smile. For me, this becomes an opportunity to mirror their behavior by smiling myself. How many of you, when you see somebody smile, you smile back? Well, if you're normal, that's the normal thing to do. Somebody smiles at you, you smile back. But it's a way for me to mirror their behavior. Did you know that smiling can also release feel-good hormones like dopamine and endorphins and serotonin? And smiling, just like the box breathing, results in relaxation. It creates a positive feedback loop that when you smile, you feel good. And when you feel good, you smile. And sometimes you've just got to smile at the craziness that's happening around you. When I'm at work, sometimes I tell my coworkers all the time, embrace the chaos. Just embrace the chaos by smiling and realizing this is just a temporary situation. When you smile, you tell the brain, I'm ready to make a connection. You're ready to make a connection to another human being who's also smiling back at you and giving you those good vibes and helping you release that dopamine and those endorphins. And when you do this, your mood improves and guess what? You lighten up. You lighten up in that moment. So, sources of resilience for me, things that I put into my resilience fund on a regular basis: prayer, intentional awareness, healthy relationships, and making others smile. So I want to turn it to you. I want to ask you to write down 5 or so resources that you can use to put into your resilience fund. And if you feel so bold and you want to share them, send me an email at themindfulpharmd@gmail.com. I want to hear and later maybe even share some things that you, my listeners, are doing to improve your resilience, to give you that strength to overcome in stressful situations. I leave you with this. Focus your thoughts on what is true, noble, righteous, pure, lovable, or admirable, on some virtue or on something praiseworthy. Think about these things. I hope you've enjoyed the show today. I'll see you next time.